Hey Phoenixes, so today I'm going to take you through textured landscapes and how to build up value. So one of the biggest challenges that I often see with the rodeo projects is one of the hardest things to really master. I'm going to be using colored pencils as my medium, but know that based on the medium of choice that you've selected, there might be some slight changes as far to how you approach it. But for the most part, it's always going to come down to making sure that you're able to control your tones, your value tones all the way over. So that is looking at your highlights, your shadows, and your midtones on your project, that reference photo that we're using. We're going to start with the midtones and light pressure, same as we did with our portrait. We're going to build it up, and that final step is to how do we add in that fine line detail. So with colored pencils, it's going to have that nice sharp point. Maybe watercolor, you have a smaller brush where you're building up some of those values after starting with that light wash. So this is really going to be fun for you to just pay attention, look at how I'm approaching things, and hopefully you can take back how to use texture and value to really push your rodeo project to the next level. All right, so as you can see on my screen, I've got something pulled up. Now this is an artwork, and I know that you're going to be having a reference from a picture, but I wanted to at least start with the grass section. I've highlighted where I'm looking at, and then we're going to talk about it before I really start on my page. I have started us a little bit. But the big thing, y'all, that you want to consider, and again, I'm using colored pencils, is that you want to really look at what that full color palette is. So I've got some lights, some midtones, and some shadows with my complement that I'm going to use for the shadow. I'm going to bring in some reds into that darker green just to set off and warm up the color palette just a little bit. But the big thing you always want to take a look at are these lighter colors. So just as we did with our portrait, you again look for the lightest tones first. So I see in here that there's these kind of whitish blades of grass that's here, but for the most part it's this yellow and kind of very light green here. And there's even a little bit of white that's probably mixed in right there. And so as I bring in my colors, get them started first. Good thing is to set them up in the space that you need it to be. And then I'm going to go ahead and come in. We always start with that light pressure. And in this space, I'm using this yellow. I don't want to do this like back and forth, right? I'm adding in that soft circular motion, very light pressure, and I'm building up. Okay? So I'm going to kind of come up here, and this is the section that I'm looking at all across, okay? So it kind of flattens out a little bit. Maybe I'm going to bring it out just a little bit more. Now, it's really about patience. When you're laying down color, it might take 2 or 3 passes to really get that initial, but we're taking away the white of that paper, and that's the goal. I'm using the overhand grip, and I'm using the side of the pencil in order to really help build that up. The very last thing that you do is you add those vertical grass blades. Now remember, the further back, if you take a look at here, you'll see how the artist's approach. The further back towards the horizon line, which is this big long line that's right here, you're not seeing any of those real grades until you get here, the grass blades, but you do see it within the shadows of here. But as you get closer, that's where you start seeing those details. So this is called depth, or depth of field. The further away you get, the smaller things are obviously going to be, and the less detail you're going to notice as well. You also see a drop off of color. So the closer it is, the more vivid your colors should be. The more you go back and into that background, you see those muted colors. Meaning this is richer, greener, this is less green, got a little bit of grays and some whites in there to give that illusion of depth. So that's another thing you want to think of when you're looking at that color palette. The difference between this to this to this and even this right here in the background. So we're going to go ahead and come back here. Now notice, this is really soft. This is the back that I'm doing here, but as you start getting into these shadow areas, we change our mark making to be vertical, and it's up and down. Now you can layer on those verticals, or you can come back. Now I'm going to take the path of, I'm going to layer it on. So it is vertical, it's up and down, kind of changing direction a little bit. I'm making some breaks here. But I'm just adding in just that kind of base layer. I'm going over top. Now grass goes in different directions and you want to do that as well, okay? I might have them come in a little bit and they might even connect. But I'm adding that green color over the yellow so it starts blending in. So it works. Then I'm going to come down here. Remember, it's longer strokes as it gets closer to you. Now I know it doesn't look much right now, and that's to be expected. Because at this point, we've only really added 2 colors to our color palette. So as I notice that there's a little bit of that yellow taken away, so I'm going to even come in here and soften some of those spaces in between by adding a little bit of this green over top of my yellow. So I've added a little bit of those verticals, so that's okay. I've changed my space. Now look at that. Back up a little bit. So that's also something that you want to consider. Look at it from different angles. Stand up, pull yourself away from your color. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to come back in and I'm going to start adding in more of those verticals. I'm going to continue to build up my grass texture here. Every once in a while, I might just take one. You're the artist and you get to decide. Maybe we even get a couple in there. Okay. Now it's starting to get longer as it's towards me. Now I'm just really gonna, even in this area here, I'm doing lighter pressure. But as it goes back, I'm gonna start getting shorter in my strokes. And I'm gonna change levels a little bit. So that's one of the things that you notice. It's really subtle. Okay, now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start adding in some of my shadows, some of those darker tones. Now I'm going to add mostly to the bottom here. And I'm doing a little bit of just going over the lighter pressure, but kind of working in some of those spots. Now it is going to cover up some of the stuff that you already did, and that's okay. But ultimately, shadows will do that. You're going to lose some of that detail in the shadows. And that last and final piece, come in here, get that nice sharp point, and this is where you start adding in some of those darker oh no. Because then once you get these dark spots over, that's where we're then going to go, and you're going to be able to separate and actually add in white more. You're going to see that white come through. Yeah. Not all grass sways. You might have some that are in there that are up and down. And then that's where you come in and add a little bit of white. Some of those highlights. The last kind of subtleness, add a little bit of that red to it. Adding that complement. Always helps. Okay. So that gets you set up. So remember, the tool is all in your hand. So going from that light to adding in some of those midtones over top of it, really building up, and get to this point, start really building out the base, and then you can go back in, after go to another part of your piece, then come back and add a little bit more detail here, a little bit more detail here. And then that last piece is going to be really burnishing in where you need to go. So if you want that burnish kind of shiny look, you've got white pencils that you can do it. You can blending in, taking away some of that softness. Now this is burnished a little bit more otherwise. So that's the first tip. Then the second image we're looking at is some trees. Now trees are another one, but the principle still applies. But the one thing with this, in this case, you're often probably going to see that even though I've got these tree lines, I'm going to need to actually add in some sky and some ground first. So I'm going to take it and I'm actually going to put some white, and you're not going to see it. Then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add my blue back in. Now I'm doing this because I can then go back in with my other colors. All right. So I'm going to blend it. I'm burnishing together. Now, we're going to start adding in. Now, in this case, all the tree is, bushes, things like that, it is circles. Unless you're really close and you're up on top of each other, this is all you need. And then it's about breaks in that color. Look at the way that this particular tree right here, right? So in this case, we're kind of building it up. It kind of fans out a little bit, but it changes direction when it gets over here. You see more of this like swoop, okay? You see that swoop and it comes about. Here, it goes up a little bit further. So it's almost like little circles and then a little bigger circle, kind of tapers back again. You see a couple of those. You're the artist. You get to decide. But leave some spaces, add some layers. Now it starts getting dense in some areas, so then you can just come in here and you can kind of build up that pressure. Leave some gaps if you need to. Okay. We've got more. Now it's about look at those lighter areas, and then you can build up those couple. So I'm kind of looking right here. So I see a little patch, a little patch, a little patch. And I build those up a few times. Then I'm going to come back in underneath, lighter pressure, and put that same green underneath to fill that in. Because then that's when I'm going to come in here with both my red. And I'm going to start building up those tones underneath of it. Whoa, it's magic. Okay. Get my mouse out of the way here. Again, with that little bit of green that's here, build the value around it. It's little small circles using a duller end of the pencil because I don't want to get, I'm starting to get some strong marks and I don't want that. Okay. And even then, I bring in a little bit darker. You need to bring in a little bit of yellow or a little bit of green again. Okay. And then the all important complementary color. Mix it in just a little bit to get those deeper colors here. I bring in the complementary color and then I go right back again and I add that darker green over top just so that it mixes. Next thing I know, I've got some darker trees. By the time you start building this up and you've got that color in, so trees are really just about looking at the breaks and the value, adding up those colors. Going back over again. And again, the same as I did here. So I built it up, and it might not look so much right now, but then that's when you come in, change that direction, add some of those nice fine details. Just build some of those vertical pieces so it stands out a little bit more. This time I'm changing the direction of the piece and what it is. Kind of doing some verticals, but then coming out in different directions. And eventually, be able to put that. Now look at the tree branches themselves too. So again, the closer it is, in this case it's a little bit thicker and it's also more saturated, while the ones in the back may not be. Okay. There you go. Now, barnwood is that last one that we'd look at. Same as we did before. Imagine that we're taking this red that's right here. So you have to consider that there is the light piece first, but then you start seeing the kind of stronger lines on the side. Now you've got that shiny effect. That is caused by obviously it being metal, and so what we can do is we can burnish, give that shiny kind of metalish effect. Not wood at all, but same process applies as we did before. We get that light drop first, then we start adding in some of those details that we needed. And add in even a little bit of orange and a little bit of blue. So that is it, y'all. Good luck. Practice your textures before you get into it if you need to. But other than that, you've got all the tools. Take it, run with it, be awesome. And good luck.